Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we're going to start having a look at building a center console for the Alfarrari. Alright guys, welcome back, and those watching last week will have seen that I spent a fair bit of time putting a lot of the interior back into the car, particularly getting the seats in, and had to move the passenger seat over to get some more room in the tunnel. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and please think about subscribing. It does help the channel out. Yeah, lots of people were questioning about the tunnel being offset in the Alfa, and it was from factory. That's how Alfa built it. They built this car, obviously originally designed as a left-hand drive car, and when they built it, built the right-hand drive versions, they just fitted into the same floor pan and didn't bother changing the tunnel around or anything like that. By moving the seat over last week, it gave me a lot more room in the middle. And today I'm going to go through and start mocking up my center console that I would need in the car, and just marking out everything that needs to go in here, work out how to put it in and out so that I can access the, I need to be able to remove it so I can remove the gearbox and things like that. So let's start getting into it. Alright, so I just spent a whole bunch of time fitting in the heater and making up a few Raceworks lines to actually join it together. So we've got the inlet and the outlet for the heater, and this big line here that goes all the way down and exits out through into the tunnel there, and it actually goes down and exits on the ground. That's actually the drain from the scuttle. Underneath the wipers, that's where all of that drainage goes down there and empties out sort of down next to the gearbox. So now we've got most of the bits in, we can start looking at mocking up a tunnel. Alright, so I'm starting to mock up the interior, and this is the original center console that was in this car. And it almost works for what I'm doing, but I need to extend it. I need to change things around. I need to put some more switches. I don't need an ashtray. As much as this is sort of nice and funky, it's not necessary for what I'm doing. Some of you might be disappointed that I'm actually going to be using a real old Ferrari steering wheel that one of you guys sent to me. Thank you very much. This is going to go in it. So you might be disappointed that I'm not using this old Toyota steering wheel with a chunk missing out of it. But this is the rough layout of what we need to do. So now what I'm doing is I'm getting an idea of how the current layout is, and I need to tweak it to fit my purposes. My plan is to make it feel a bit like the original Alfa interior, but just with a few things mixed around and pinching bits out of the different eras of this car that I like. So this is the original gauge cluster in here. I'm going to have to change this around because these gauges won't work for the electronic signals I've got now. These are cable driven gauges, and there's an oil pressure gauge in here. So I've got extra gauges I need to mount, so I'm either need to mount them here or down here. I'm not sure yet. I'm still going to work it out, but I think let's get the cardboard out and do a bit of CAD modelling. Alright, so you can start to get a bit of an idea of what I've been doing, getting a center console sort of designed up. I've got plenty of room for the gear stick movement. I'm still working out whether I'm going to put gauges here or put my stereo here and put gauges up here, or vice versa. I'm just going to have a little bit of think about that. And now I need to continue this along and make my new tunnel complete all the way through to the back. right, well that was a whole lot more work to build a full center console all the way through to the back, trying to work out how it sort of goes. It starts, it comes in, it narrows down next to the seats and then widens out again going to the back. It covers up the track it's going to take to cover up those air conditioning lines down under this area here. And I've got to have to do a bit of work on the back. There's going to probably be a panel across the back to sort of work in with the trimming. I still got some design work to do as far as that goes. Remembering that there are no back seats back here because we've got the roll cage that's already built to go in. So there's still other work to do around, but I wanted to get the center console mocked up for now, and the basic shape is there. So now I need to start laying out all my switch gear so that it will actually function the way it needs to. All right, so I've been going through and fitting up my center console and sort of laying things out. Now, one of the things I need to work out is I've got a couple of gauges and stereo to go in. But originally, from what I understand, these cars mostly came without any stereo at all. There was no option. It was just this dash was blank. There's no provision for speakers. I obviously made my speaker provisions while I was building the car, but that was not originally the case. Somebody put this in at some other stage, but what I'm thinking is I may actually put the gauges up here. There's 2 round gauges I need to put in. I've got a oil level gauge for seeing the oil level in the dry sump tank and an oil pressure gauge. Now, because I've changed the gauges in the dash, I don't have the oil pressure gauge in here anymore. I'm going to have to change that. So I'm thinking up here is actually better because this is where it's in the line of sight. It's where you'll see it, even though the 1750s actually had 2 gauges just in here. So it would match with the style of the car, but I'm thinking that might be the place to put the stereo there, sort of down, hidden a bit out of the way. The gauges are the more important thing to see up in the eye line, and I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put them up there. Moving my way down, I've got the original gaiter that goes around the shifter. That looks good, and there's going to be the levers still that control the heater and aircon. I will go through how that is going to work. Coming down, I've got a bunch of switches, which I've got all sorts of things to go into the car, which I will sort of show you once we're actually a lot further down into it. But there's fan switches and wiper switches because the wipers were not on a stalk on this car. I've got some switches, exhaust valves and aircon and windscreen washer fluids, and then I've got the rear window quarter glasses in and out, and of course a cup holder, which is a must in any of these cars. I can probably only really fit one neatly, but that's fine, and then I'll have to do a divot for the handbrake and do something around there. But that is the layout at this stage. So now it's a matter of working out how I'm going to trim it and make it removable and still being able to get it in and out without pulling everything apart to get the gearbox, get to the gearbox, etc. All right, so I've got my 2 sides cut out now. Bit of bending on the brake and then sort of on the ground with my knee. I didn't get it all on camera, but it's just sort of flexing and bending to get the things into roughly the shape that I want my center console. And I'm pretty happy with the basic layout now. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to move on and start doing the rear half as well and see if we can join this thing up and make a full console. All right, so I have basically the side profiles for my center console the whole way through, but now I need to find a way to actually join them together, hold them in place, and bolt them down to the center of the car. There's still a little bit of thought process going on here to try and work out exactly how to make this all work the way I want it to, but it's looking good so far. And for those of you who have been asking about my plasma cutter setup, I use the world-class welders and plasma cutters. I've got the AC/DC TIG and it's a Cutforce 43P, and it makes this sort of work so quick and easy. Basically, for those who don't understand, plasma cutter is only connected to air compressor and power, and it blasts away, and it cuts so easily. It makes this sort of stuff, this sort of 2mm aluminium is actually a bit of a headache to cut. It works well with like sort of saw type things, but it doesn't work very well with angle grinder stuff. It tends to melt it, whereas the plasma cutter just cuts through it like butter, and it's just nice and quick and easy. But anyway, let's see if we can start bracing this thing together. All right, so I spent some time then and did some loose measurements just to get the initial bracing into the center console. And I've put in 2 braces, and I actually used a couple of thicknesses of aluminium to set the depth on these braces so they sit down from the edge, because what I want to actually do is I'm going to trim over the edges of this of the sides of the aluminium, and then have an insert that sits into it. So I think it should look quite nice once it's all trimmed and leather and all that sort of stuff. We've got the initial basic shape, so now we can put this back in the car and then start working through the rest of the braces, get the measurements, and and see if we can actually build a solid center console. All right, and we have the center console all sitting there, all in place. So that's the start, but obviously we still need to fix it down. It still just wobbles around. It's not actually in there permanently. So I need to try and work out how I'm going to do a couple of fixing points to keep it where it's supposed to be. All right, so I did some very dodgy welding and welded in a couple of mounts on either end of the center console. After looking at, I think 2 mounts is going to be plenty. The piece is very solid in there, and once I get the center inserts in, it's not going to be moving anywhere. So I don't need it held down by a million spots. 2 will do the job, and that is now the center part made, except for where I stuffed up the cutout. I don't know how I did this, so I'm going to mark out a new template now, cut up a little bit and weld it on and extend this back out again. And also this is obviously, should have a nice little flare on it as well that will help cover the hole where the air conditioning lines are going to come through and sort of hide up underneath the center console. All right, well, I have the basic framework of the rear half of the center console done. I've got the sides of the front done. I've still got some things to sort out to work out how I'm going to actually attach them, make it easily removable. There's a few more bits and pieces to do. There's a lot of work to get to here. Doing this custom fabrication stuff really takes a lot of time, and that is all of it that I have this week. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, the Ferrari F50 was built between 95 and 97, and it was designed to celebrate Ferrari's 50th anniversary. It was also built as a successor to the iconic F40. The F50 was designed to be a road-going version of the company's Formula One car, and it was built using the most advanced technologies and materials of the time. It was powered by a 4.7-litre naturally aspirated V12 engine that was based on the one used in the Ferrari 641 Formula One car. The engine produced 513 horsepower and 347 pounds of torque and could rev up to 9,000 revs per minute. The engine and the transmission were carried over from the Ferrari 333 SP that we talked about last week. The chassis of the Ferrari F50 was made out of carbon fibre, which of course made it incredibly light but also very strong at the same time, and the body was designed by Pininfarina. The F50 was not without its critics. Some purists felt that the F50 was too soft and it lacked the raw performance and excitement of its predecessor, the F40. Despite the criticisms, the F50 remains one of the most desirable and sought after Ferraris of all time. In fact, Ferrari only produced 349 of them, making it very desirable and highly sought after and hard to get your hands on.
All right, well, it's getting there. This sort of fabrication stuff is very slow and time consuming, but I'm quite happy with the shape of the center console at the moment and how it's coming together. And I've got sort of given me time to work out how I'm going to make the front all removable. I've got an idea of how I'm going to make all that sort of be easily serviceable. So it's really going to shape the interior, and obviously there's going to be reshaping of the seats and all sorts of, there's lots of stuff to come. So yes.
You'll be back at the couture machine.
Yes, in my sewing room.
Yes, in your sewing room, indeed.
All right.
Right, well, it's been great. Like and subscribe and let Jeff know what you think.
Yep.
Patreon, of course, if you want to help him out and support him in his garage gallivanting. And
yeah, enjoy, and we'll see you next time.
And by the way, I think our summer's over.
Yeah, we had some really nice...
We had like a final blast of heat, and now it's just...
Like 2 weeks ago, and now it's freezing cold again.
Not like Canadian cold, or Northern Europe
Australian cold. Yeah.
Australian cold.
Yeah. All right, guys. See ya.
Successor to the iconic F40. No. Of their race car. And it was built. Buick. It was Buick. It was made out of carbon fibre, which might wide it. What is going on with this? There was some vowel trouble today. The chassis of the Ferrari F40. The chassis of the Ferrari F50 was made of carbon fibre